Hey everybody, so I just talked about the Eastern Conference playoff race with Montreal and Columbus. Now we're going to move out west and talk about the wild card race out west. And this is an interesting one. There's a couple more teams involved. It's really a three-team race rather than a two-team race in the East. That's about the only difference. Um, Right now, you have Minnesota in the last wild card spot with 79 points in 75 games played. And then the first two teams out, I think, are the two teams that are still in it as far as getting in. And that's Colorado with 78 points through 74 games, and Arizona with 78 points in 74 games. So those are the teams that really, I think, have a chance to get in. Chicago and Vancouver are at 74 points. I don't think they have much of a chance. And then anyone below that is out at this point. Above that last wild card spot, you have Dallas in the first wild card spot with 82 points. I think that they're fairly safe. They have a 4-point cushion there. I think they're going to be fine. And then everyone above Dallas, I think no one's catching any of the top three teams in either division now. I think Winnipeg, Nashville, St. Louis is pretty much set as being your Central Division top three, and Calgary, San Jose, Vegas is certainly set as your Pacific Division top three. So, that's how those are going to finish. It's going to come down to the wild card. I think Dallas maintains that first wild card. So it's going to be Minnesota, Colorado, and Arizona fighting for one spot. Minnesota, they have played one more game than the other two teams, so that puts them at a slight disadvantage. But it's only a 1-point difference, so anything can happen with 7-8 games left. That's still enough time to make up a couple of points. So Minnesota is a team that has been really interesting this year because they've gone on some really hot stretches where they've looked really good, and then they've gone on some really bad stretches where they look awful. And they haven't really been consistent at all. It's been a very up and down year for the Wild, and they're clinging to life now. Minnesota, that extra game could end up playing a big role. 75 games played, that's why they're a point in. They beat Washington last night. But, Colorado's been playing well lately. Arizona's still trying to make a push. Colorado's an interesting team as well because they were on fire to start the year. They had a tremendous first half of the season, and then it just died, and they had an awful second half. They had a stretch there, I think it was in February, where they lost I want to say 14 or 15 out of a 20-game stretch. They were just abysmal. And, that ended up really costing them overall in the standings. They were a team that was competing up with Nashville and Winnipeg in the Central. And then, a month and a half, 2 months later, they're not even in a playoff position. That's a big problem. So, in Arizona, Arizona's kind of been the opposite. They've been resurgent lately. They were kind of, they were an improved team, but not a great team. For most of this year, and they were kind of middling in that, just outside the playoff picture. And then they've gotten really good goaltending recently. They're playing a lot better. They've gotten kind of, on a hot stretch here, and they're right all of a sudden in it. And for a while there, they were the one holding that wild card spot. So it would be something if we could see Arizona make the playoffs. That would really be interesting and cool. It'd be really cool for me to see Carolina and Arizona make the playoffs in the same year because those are two teams that are just rarely in the playoffs and historically have rarely been in the playoffs, at least in recent history. So to see them both make it in the same year would really be cool. But Colorado has just as good of a chance, and I think Minnesota has just as good of a chance. This is another thing. I'm not going to predict who's going to win it because this is something that could very easily come down to the last week, maybe even the last day of the season. I mean, these teams are right on top of each other. So, it's an absolute dogfight, and I think if Minnesota doesn't make it, I think that looks really bad for them. But also if Colorado doesn't make it, I think that looks pretty bad for them given, how good they were to start this year. Arizona, I think they have the least pressure on them because I don't think many people expected them to make the playoffs this year. I think we all expected them to be better than they were last season, where they had a really rough year last year, but they have been. They've been much better than than they were last season. They've already done that. And whether they make it or not, I think this has been a successful rebuild season for Arizona. And I think that they've shown good improvement. So I think the pressure is kind of off them. If they get in, that's fantastic. If not, it's not like it's a failed season. They've already shown the improvement that they've needed to show. And they'll gear up for next season. For Minnesota and Colorado, I mean, they both made the playoffs last season, and I think the expectations are there that they would make the playoffs this year. So for for whichever one of them that doesn't get in, or potentially if Arizona does get in, both of them that don't get in, that could be really, really disappointing. And I think Colorado is interesting. They've got a lot of young talent there. I don't think it's the end of the world if Colorado misses, because I think Colorado has a lot. They have a very bright future. They have a lot in the making with them. Their future is very bright. They obviously Cale Makar, my pick for the best player in college hockey. My favorite player in college hockey goes to UMass Amherst, so close to home for me. Cale Makar is a Colorado Avalanche prospect. He is going to be a superstar at the NHL level, I think. The kid is unreal. I think he's the best player in college hockey without a doubt. So Colorado is going to get him probably. He'll probably be in the lineup next year. That kid is unreal. And if he's not in it next year, he will be the year after. And they also have Ottawa's first-round draft pick for this year, which is likely to be the _1 overall pick. So Colorado has not only a pretty good team now, and obviously some huge stars like McKinnon and Rantanen and Landeskog and Tyson Barrie and Zadorov on the back end of really good young players. Barry's not as young anymore. He's been around now, but he's an electric player. Colorado has a lot going for them for the future as well as the now. Whereas Minnesota, they're a veteran team. They're a win-now team. And if they're not winning now, that's a problem. So I think Minnesota probably has the most pressure on them to make the playoffs, because if they don't make the playoffs, I think Bruce Boudreau is probably getting fired. And there might be other changes as well with that team, because they're a veteran win-now team, and they're not winning. So it would be a huge disappointment for them not to make the playoffs. For Colorado, yeah, they want to be in the playoffs, and they probably should be in the playoffs, but they have enough, in the prospect pool and in the draft pick pool where their future is still very bright, even if they miss it this year, and they can come back with a vengeance next season. So, that's pretty much where it sits in the Western Conference. Minnesota's holding the spot right now. Colorado and Arizona are 1 point behind. Again, it's going to be a dogfight down to the end of the season. Might literally come down to the last day. We'll have to wait and see, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch, and it's going to be some good hockey. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.